Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everybody, it's Debbie Potts, the host of the Whole Athlete Podcast, bringing you one of my favorite topics today, metabolic efficiency and how to become a fat-adapted endurance athlete, as so many of us are still eating that high-carb diet filled with refined sugars, gels, and bars, and not really training our body to burn fat as its main fuel source, as we should during endurance events, as well as when we're at rest. So we're going to talk today to Matt Bach from UCAN, Generation UCAN, to discuss how we can become more metabolically efficient and burn fat and fuel with a slow release carbohydrate that can keep you energized during the workouts and your training and racing events without having that bonk of too much sugar and the GI distress from having too much of that sugar intake of gels that just don't do well in your gut. So Matt has his own triathlon background. He won IRONMAN Maryland in 2014, was a top amateur and 6 overall Eagleman, 70.3 in 2015, then placed 72nd overall in Kona in 2015. Matt worked on Wall Street for 9 years, but recently earned his MBA from Temple University and made a career change, as now he is in the triathlon world working as the triathlon business director for UCAN. Matt has been using UCAN as an athlete since 2014, and he had GI distress and bulking issues prior to that, but UCAN helped him transform his approach to triathlon nutrition that led to performance breakthroughs. He's a big believer that now So much of a big believer that now he actually works for the company. Matt has a wife and 2 kids, ages 1 and 2. Wow, it's a handful, and lives in Summit, New Jersey. He also loves to golf, play tennis and bowling, playing cards, and a nice glass of scotch. So we're always interested in talking more to athletes and coaches and how we can help prevent the aging process that happens as we stress our body more, especially with endurance events and chronic training. So let's bring on Matt and let's talk about our performance and longevity gains that we can make being a fat-adapted athlete. All right, here we go. Okay, everybody, I've got our guest on the show, Matt from Generation UCAN, to help us learn more how we can become fat-adapted, metabolically efficient, and flexible endurance athletes. Thanks for coming out today and talking on the show.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
So I want to first start telling you, the listeners, your story, how you work for Generation UCAN and you're in charge of the triathlon division. Talk about kind of your journey, how you got to this position here.
Yeah, definitely not a linear path that I followed to get here. I went to school, undergraduate. I went to Western Connecticut State University, and I graduated with a finance degree. And I actually started working on Wall Street, and I worked on Wall Street for the last 9 years. And I went back to get my MBA 2 years ago. I just graduated last Thursday.
Nice work.
Thank you. And then that was like all a move so that I could get to what I'm doing now, which is a career move. I'm now working in my passion, and I get to talk about triathlon, and I get to talk about metabolic efficiency training and UCAN all day long. So it's amazing.
So you are, as I said in your the intro for you, you're an experienced endurance athlete, and you've accomplished a lot in your career so far. How have you gone from a typical carb burner, high sugar intake during racing and training, and then you switched to more of a learning about metabolic efficiency athlete? So talk about that background and how you got into UCAN, because everyone has a reason or something happened that they had an aha moment.
Yeah, many of us experience GI distress or bonking, and that's what drives so many of us to UCAN and to burning fat better. And my story was very much in that vein. So back when I started triathlon in 2010, I did some sprints that year. Then the next year I did some half Ironman events. And then the following year in 2012, I did my first Ironman. I did Ironman Lake Placid. And the people that I was training with were all telling me to use this conventional approach, right? Like this is what you do. This is what I was taught by everyone, and everyone kept saying the same thing, so it must be right? They were all telling me, okay, you just need to train your gut. You need to take lots and lots of sugar in your training, and you need to just train your gut so that you can take lots and lots of calories. And they gave me this rule of thumb. They said, if you take your body weight and you multiply it by 2, that's how many calories per hour you should be taking. So I'm like, okay, 150 times 2, like, okay, 300 calories an hour. That's like 3 goos. So I took my gels and I took my sports drinks and I tried everything on the planet. I mean, like pretty much you name it, I've tried it. EFS, Carbo Pro, Scratch, Ironman Perform when that was big, and it was on course, and then Gatorade Endurance, and like, you name it, I tried it. I tried the blocks and the gels and everything. So it all basically did the same thing, though. In my training and then particularly in my racing, I'd have issues with either GI distress or bonking, and I'll describe in a second like how those two became to be related for me, and I think probably many people. In 2012, I did Ironman Lake Placid, and I wasn't going in with the goal of qualifying for Kona, but I missed it by 1 slot and what turned out to be less than a minute and a half. And then the next year I went back to Lake Placid again, and I said, okay, I'm just going to train harder, and I'll just do it this time. I'll qualify for Kona. I missed it by 1 slot. So then 4 weeks after Lake Placid 2013, I went to Louisville, and that wasn't on the initial plan, but 4 weeks later I did Ironman Louisville, and I ended up winning my age group there. And then I qualified for Kona, so I went 7 weeks after that and went to Kona. And those are my first 4 Ironmans, and those are the 4 Ironmans where I was using this conventional approach. And 2 of those races, Placid's 2013 and Kona 2013, I had major GI distress, bonking episodes that caused my performance to be nowhere near where it should have been. And it was really frustrating because I had all this great training, and then on race day, it all was for naught. It was like playing Russian roulette in my racing. I was like, okay, I got a 50-50 whether my nutrition's going to hold me back or not. And the other 2 times I had kind of like minorish GI distress. I was able to kind of walk that fine line between GI distress and bonking. And so I was able to get away with it kind of and still run okay. And I was able to perform, well enough that I was able to, still qualify for Kona and still have some pretty good performances. But still, it was nowhere near where I knew I could be. And as far as like how that GI distress and the bonking happened, like how I see that, I'd get to like my 9th gel at Ironman Placid 2013. I'm like, okay, I just don't want this anymore.
Yeah.
I've got stomach ache. I've got bloating. I'm like, I feel like I'm going to vomit if I eat this thing.
It sounds gross. Just listening to that just makes my stomach turn.
Right. So then at that point, I'm just throwing the gel aside. Like, I'm done with this. I'd rather not eat it than eat it at this point. And I know I'm going to bonk. So lo and behold, 30, 40 minutes later, I don't have any fuel left in my system. So I bonk. But I felt like there was no other choice. Either you got to shove in the stuff that makes you want to puke, or you got to just, get lucky or not take it and then bonk. So I don't know. It was a big challenge. So then finally I said, enough is enough. I got to figure out some better solution to this. I want to stop playing Russian roulette with my racing. And I spoke with a sports nutritionist. Her name is Nikki Schock. She's a metabolic efficiency training specialist under Bob Seebahar. She learned from him and she taught me. She was actually a friend even before she became a sports nutritionist. And she went down that rabbit hole and learned a lot and then encouraged me and essentially convinced me to try to give it a shot. I mean, at first I was really skeptical because she's telling me things like, okay, you can do an Ironman in under 100 calories an hour. Or she's telling me like, there's all these people out there that are doing that right now. And I'm like, yeah, right. Under those, I'm like, oh no, those are like the people who aren't, qualifying for Kona and stuff. Like those are the people who are going like 15 hours. And I'm like, and then she's like, no, totally not. Like she gave me a few examples of people who were faster athletes who were using it. And I was finally like, okay, fine. Like I tried poking holes in it forever. I was like, fine, I'm just going to give it a shot. And in 3 months, I saw major changes.
What did you do to change that made the biggest impact?
Yeah. So I was surprised by how subtle the differences were. They weren't major, massive, drastic changes for the most part, at least in terms of how I perceived them. So I enjoyed my food just as much using the concepts of metabolic efficiency training as I did beforehand. Like it's not like you're cutting out everything that tastes good. Like you have burgers and you have like steak and you have fish and all these things that are delicious, but they actually fit with the profile. So just like one very specific example, I would wake up every morning before I trained or before I went to work, and I'd have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That's my go-to. So I'd get up, I'd have 2 or 3 of those. And that's just 2 slices of bread, 2 or 3. Yeah. And that would sometimes be lunch too. Wow. So I would have that's 2 slices of bread. I would have a relatively thin layer of peanut butter, and then I'd have jelly. And that's a lot of sugar. Like if you talk about the ratio, that's a 4 or 5 to 1 ratio, I think it is, the way that I was making them. So one tweak was taking that and just having 1 slice of bread instead, like a good whole grain or whole wheat type bread, and then putting a nice thick layer of peanut butter or almond butter on top, and then adding chia seeds, or maybe just like a tiny, tiny little bit of jelly. And it was delicious, and I loved it. I look forward to it every morning. But it was then within the 2 to 1 ratio that I was looking for most of my meals, so that I could keep my blood sugar relatively steady. Mm-hmm. And I also learned that I like Greek yogurt, which I didn't really know until that time.
So you weren't necessarily going low carb, drastically low carb changing. You were just kind of changing those macronutrient ratios that works well for your body based on your. So I would say we want to burn fat, not sugar, but we need to focus on what ratio of carbs, fat, protein we need to consume that balances our blood sugar and keeps that steady level, so we avoid the surges of insulin.
Yeah, exactly. So we were taking pairing carbs with protein and with fat to make sure that there were no big blood sugar spikes throughout the day, or very few of them. You're allowed to have some misses with the plan, and that's part of what makes it sustainable. But by stabilizing blood sugar, you're keeping those insulin responses muted, and whenever insulin is present in your body, it stops you from burning fat, and it's a pretty sensitive mechanism in the body. So by keeping that insulin levels down, and that's part of the beauty of UCAN as well, by keeping those insulin responses down, you're able to keep your body in that fat burning mode, and then it gets better and better and better at it. So I saw pretty major improvements in just 3 months. And before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about the metabolic efficiency carts, the metabolic carts, and I did a bunch of testing on those with Nikki.
That's what I was going to ask next. So how do you know? I would say test, not guess, because to know, it's so great to see on those metabolic carts testing athletes, to really get them to understand what's going on with their body when you get the test. Because for years, I know people that still train those higher heart rates and their higher power meters on their bike, and they don't see that they're burning primarily carbohydrates for fuel until they get a test. And they're like, oh, now I get it. I'm completely above my peak fat burning heart rate range is where I should train. And I know cyclists and triathletes on their bike, they're going more by power versus heart rate. And I just find it such great data to collect from doing testing. And if you could retest and see, all right, what changes do I need to make with my diet and nutrition program or exercise program, as well as the other elements. We talk a lot about sleep and stress and all that stuff, the holistic method to improve our performance, to maximize that ability to burn fat. So for you, what did you do, the bike test the most, or treadmill, or combination?
I've done both, but I've done actually the different formats of it, the continuous as well as the stepped one, where you go a little bit harder every 5 minutes. So I started, the first tests that I did though were on the treadmill. And when I very, very first started with Nikki, even before we really started making any changes to my diet, I did a metabolic efficiency test on her metabolic cart. And that was on a treadmill. And I had a mask hooked up to me. So it was, measuring the, what's coming out of my breath, my respiration. And it's measuring it to see whether I'm burning primarily fat or carbs or what percentage of each. So when I initially tested, when I was at Ironman or goal Ironman race pace for the marathon leg, which was a 6:45 pace, I was looking at 60% carbohydrates being burned and 40% fat. And that was like, okay, now we've got our baseline. That's already, it's not bad, but it could be improved. And then we looked at the ways that I was eating and how we could improve it. And like I mentioned, with like the peanut butter and jelly and swapping that out for like some bread with chia seeds, or other things that I did were like eggs and Greek yogurt, like I mentioned. And then of course, my other meals like lunch and dinner were usually pretty typical type meals. But instead of me having like a bunch of pasta and like a few strips of grilled chicken, I'd have a more balanced meal, like, to either take out the pasta and I just have the grilled chicken with some brown rice and some veggies, or, things that are a lot more like lower glycemic, that are going to give you that stable blood sugar. So I made some of those changes. And after 5 weeks, I tested again, same cart, same procedure. And at same pace, 6:45 Ironman marathon goal pace, I was able to burn 60% fat, 40% carbohydrate.
So you totally switched it around.
So, I mean, that's a massive difference in just 5 weeks. And I have had it measured subsequently, since then. And it's even way better than that even now. I don't know exactly what it was, but I think it was something more like 70 or 70 something percent at 6:45 pace, which is just really a massive, massive change. It means I'm burning through way fewer carbohydrates and way fewer glycogen stores in my body, which for everyone is very, very limited. It's maxed out at around 2,000 or maybe 2,500 max calories. And in an Ironman or in long training, you go through that pretty quickly if you're burning carbohydrates as your main source. But because I'm able to rely on my fat stores more and not rely on all those glycogen stores, kind of preserve them for when I need them most at the end of the race, then I'm able to fuel myself less during training and racing, lean out, and not have to worry so much about carrying all sorts of nutrition or worry about the GI distress or the bonking. The test showed it. Like I knew in my training that it was working because I could feel myself not being as hungry, feeling more steady, feeling like I could do more training on less. And that all was validated by the fact that the test came back and showed it said, like the quote that you just said about, like, what was the quote again? Measure something about test, not whatever.
Yeah. Test, don't guess.
Test, don't guess. There we go. Yeah.
So I love this topic, obviously, just changing my focus as a health coach into more the athlete side as, training endurance athletes to take care of the whole athlete from the inside out. And I coach people on the holistic method is nutrition, exercise, which we're talking about, but also the sleep and the stress, mobility drills, digestion, gut health, which is ginormous, and hydration, which is very big. So I think everyone drinks all these drinks and way too much coffee. And then we've got happiness, which to me is gratitude and play and laughter and letting loose more. And I think so many of these, my story, life is not a race. I shared this myself, but so many of us competitive type A athletes, we get so serious and we're competing, we want to do really well, that we create a lot of stress. So not only that stress is coming from training at too high of heart rates, so you're getting more that black hole training. Number two is training or eating so much sugar that you're creating more free radicals, oxidative stress as well from processing carbohydrates versus fat for fuel. And then three, just the chronic stress and overtraining and under recovery that's impacting our sleep. And all this, of course, is going to impact gut health. And so it's all overlap. So if one area of the holistic method is out of whack, everything is going to be impacted. So it's that domino effect. So with your experience in switching to more Generation UCAN, is that helping reduce that overall stress, being more fat burning, you're training more efficiently in those fat burning ranges, you're eating where you're burning more fat and getting off the blood sugar roller coaster and the spikes of insulin spikes? And how is it the rest of your health improved as sleep and stress and digestion and all that?
Yeah. So just by, just the way that you feel and mentally, like less fog, I felt like I was a little bit less moody sometimes. Uh-huh. And my wife could attest to that. And I just felt more stable. Like, you know how, like, if you eat a bad meal, like, I guess, let's just say, like, you binge out on some sweets, like, you typically after that, you're not feeling so great. You've got like a headache, maybe your stomach's upset, all sorts of things go haywire in your body because you're not really treating it right. Now, when you have like a nice salad with some salmon on top or something, like you finish that meal and you feel better. You feel cleaner. You don't feel things coming out of your pores, like grease coming out of your pores. You just feel cleaner. You feel better. And I noticed that whenever I have a meal like that at dinner time, I sleep better. And anytime I have like alcohol and pizza, I don't sleep very well. Mm-hmm. And I would even get sometimes like night sweats when I would have pizza and beer because it would be kind of out of the ordinary for me. Like when I, have a miss. I'd have a meal or like some things that are definitely not falling inside my typical diet. My body would kind of react and say like, "Whoa, what are you doing to me?" And I would not sleep as well. I'd have these night sweats. And then when I was eating cleanly, I definitely was sleeping better and just feeling better. And I think from a recovery standpoint, I had less, like I think down at the biological level, like less inflammation. So I was able to recover faster on that diet.
And that's what I continue talking about in the show, mixing up the topics. To be a metabolically efficient, fat-adapted athlete, all of that should improve, right? Our gut health should improve by switching over to a drink as UCAN we'll get into next. But eating less sugar improve your recovery time, and just the sleep part is so essential. And I've been talking and writing more. What research is showing is more stop eating 3 hours before bed, so your body isn't worrying about digesting and having your blood sugar go up and down when you're sleeping, but also breaking down that food. It should be repairing, detoxifying, and healing while you're sleeping. So many people stay up so late, they eat late at night, they're trying to cram too much in during the day. And I think that gets you really out of whack and causing a lot of inflammation in your body as well, because your just simple thing is stop eating earlier and do more of that time restricted eating. But for athletes, we talk about being more fasted in the morning workout sessions. Do you do any of that yourself? And how do you use UCAN for your training and racing?
Yeah. So I do some fasted workouts, like particularly if they're less than about 45 minutes or an hour, I'll usually just do that workout fasted. But if it's anything more than like 45 minutes or an hour up to whatever it is, I'll end up using UCAN. So for instance, if I'm going for like say an hour and 15 minute swim, I'll have a serving of UCAN because I'm on my way to the pool, and then do my swim. And then when I finish, I'll either have UCAN with the protein in it, so the chocolate or the vanilla cream flavors, and then head off to work or whatever until I get a nice full meal, which, like I said, could be like Greek yogurt, could be eggs. And then on my longer rides, I use it or longer workouts really. I'll use it by having. Usually I'll have like a metabolically efficient meal before I go on the bike. And that's usually, let's say, a half hour before I go out there. And that usually never bothers my stomach when I'm out there, having a pretty full stomach when I start my ride. And then partway through the bike, maybe 2 hours into the bike, I'll be ready to fuel with some UCAN. So I'll have a bottle on the bike. Let's say I'm going for like a 4-hour ride and like an hour run off the bike. Like it's, a fairly decent sized brick day. Well, I'll have at 2 to 3 hours on the bike, I'll have a UCAN bottle with, let's say, about 2 or 3 servings worth of UCAN in it. And then that'll last me for probably the whole workout. So I won't even have to have anything during the run. I like to front load it so that I don't have to really worry about carrying anything during the run. And that way, it's just harder to digest during the run too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's one of the big benefits of being more metabolically efficient athlete, to train your body to burn fat for fuel, that you don't have to take. I can go ride 2-3 hours and just take a bottle of water and some sea salt in it or electrolytes, as UCAN has. And I think it's something you have to take time, or maybe do off season, become fat adapted, not necessarily make huge changes right now in your race season. But how can people, let's go backwards. How can UCAN help athletes if they're just kind of going from a high carb, old school kind of method for fueling to switching over to a UCAN? And we should probably explain what UCAN is, and the slow super starch is a slow release carbohydrate fuel, if we can get into the nutritional science more of UCAN.
Sure. Yeah. So UCAN is a complex carbohydrate that gives you energy without the spike and crash that you get from sugary sports drinks and gels. So it doesn't have any sugar in it, in the powders. And what's underlying it is non-GMO cornstarch that's been cooked through a very specific process that takes 40 hours. It's all natural, just heat and water. And it was discovered, and it elongates the carbohydrate molecule to the point then where it breaks down at a slower rate into your body. So it also creates this very, very long carbohydrate molecule that has low osmolality, which means that it could enter your stomach very quickly, and it exits the stomach very quickly, but it gives you this steady release of energy. So it's amazing because it's giving you this very easy on the stomach product that gives you energy over a long period of time without spiking your blood sugar. So you don't have to worry about like you said, with this chart that we have, this maybe I could attach it with the show notes, but it's a blood sugar chart that's from an actual study that shows the ingestion of UCAN causing what it does to your blood sugar, which is just the kind of the swell of energy or the swell of blood sugar, and then a steady release over time. So your blood sugar stays pretty much stable, versus a gel so it's just maltodextrin, which is what it is in pretty much all the gels and sports drinks, that spikes your blood sugar and then it crashes afterwards. And it goes below, like you get the crash, like it goes below your stable blood sugar level. And that's because of the fact that the insulin is drawing the blood sugar out of your bloodstream, but then it's overcompensating and bringing you too low. So when that happens, you end up hitting the wall once you run out of glycogen in your stores in your body, and then that energy exits your system from that crash. But that's the reason why they keep telling you to take more and more. Right? Like every 30 to 40 minutes max, they want you to be taking more of it. And that's the recommendation because it's to avoid the crash. But then, of course, when you do that, you end up with that GI distress. So that's the thing that's just so compelling about UCAN is that it's giving you this steady blood sugar. It's really easy on the stomach. So you're going to avoid the bonking and the GI distress. And because it's a steady energy, you don't have to take nearly as much. So I mentioned before how I had my first 4 Ironmans with, I was targeting like 300 calories an hour and I was taking about 230 calories an hour because I couldn't even achieve 300. I kept having those issues. During my 5th Ironman, it was Ironman Maryland in 2014. I'd been working with Nikki and she had mentioned using UCAN in conjunction with metabolic efficiency training. And I had 94 calories an hour and I won the race. I went 8 hours and 51 minutes. It was a 51-minute PR. And I was completely sold, like a complete believer at that point.
Yeah, I think I use UCAN. I haven't raced Ironman since end of 2012 Ironman. Hawaii was my last Ironman distance, but it's amazing when you train to be metabolically efficient, how you train and what you eat. And also what I've learned now is, the lifestyle factors are huge. And because even if you are eating low carb, which I explained in my blogs and my new ebook I'm writing, is you could be low carb, high fat, metabolically efficient, or try to be. But if you're chronically stressed and doing too much and having hidden stressors inside and outside your body, it will still cause your blood sugar to go up. So if you're one of those people like, I've tried this, it doesn't work for me, I'd look at your lifestyle habits, because majority of us are like me and always think more is better. And I just, wrote a blog on that and doing a presentation on this topic. But it's a huge part, I think, of being a competitive athlete that, it's nutrition, exercise is part of it to be fat adapted. But let's work on reducing your stressors at the same time to improve performance.
Yeah, totally. And that's one thing that I talk to people about too, is there's no silver bullet in triathlon. There's no one thing, like one tip that you could say that's going to transform you from a mediocre athlete to an amazing athlete or whatever it might be. Really, it's a combination of lots and lots of different things that are incremental benefits, like marginal benefits to your state of well-being, your ability to recover, your ability to adapt to your training, all these different things, benefits that come out of these little things that you're doing. Maybe it's even just like, getting those shoelaces that pull on your shoe immediately. Like it could be little things like that too, but all those little things add up to something that makes you a better athlete, makes your times drop, makes your performances get better. And that's what the pros have done such a fantastic job of. Like the elites, they have taken all those little things and continually be working on all these little tiny things that, many people might just ignore, but they're making all these little things right. Like, is their sleep right? Is their food right? Is their, their race day nutrition right? Are their shoelaces on their shoes the right type of shoelaces? Like all these little things, like they discover them at some point along the way, and they all kind of come together to the point where then they become like very, very good at what they're doing. And obviously there's genetics involved too. But
yeah, I've been using DNA Fit with athletes when I coach them. I just love people to do 23andMe or Ancestry DNA and take that raw data and upload it into DNA Fit, and let's use that part of your customized training program, because it's so essential to look at your genetics as well as the gut biome and other things as well, combining all this data to really individualize the training program. So going back to UCAN, I want to talk about the usage of it. So it's long-lasting energy, no spikes or crashes, easier on your stomach. but on the information it says 30 minutes before your workout, and then you sip on it during the workout, or what kind of do you find that works well to tell the customers using UCAN their first time?
Yeah, for your first time, I'd suggest taking one packet or one scoop of the tub, they're equivalent, and just having that about 20, 30 minutes before you start your workout. And then that'll last you for about approximately 90 minutes. Everybody's different. Everybody's better or worse at burning fat. And so you got to find what works for you. So it might be 60 minutes, every 60 minutes, or it might be every 2 hours. But 90 minutes is an approximate rule of thumb that we use to start with. So if you're going out and you're doing like an hour and a half bike ride, have a scoop beforehand. You should be able to just have water, electrolytes, depending on how hot it is during your ride, and that should be it. For rides that are longer, having one scoop or one packet, one serving every 90 minutes approximately is a pretty good rule of thumb. And again, you got to find what works for you. But that's probably the best way to try it. And really, like, what's so awesome about UCAN is, and being working for this company now, is that it's so much fun to be able to say, use it, try it, and it's just going to sell itself. Like all you got to do is go out there and just give it a shot, and you're gonna notice the difference. And my job's done.
So I see there's two products now, performance energy powder and a workout energy powder. What's the difference of that, or those two different products?
Yeah, great question. So performance energy is designed for workouts longer than 90 minutes, and workout energy is designed towards workouts less than 90 minutes. So the serving size is smaller for the workout energy. So you'd have one scoop of workout energy, and that's going to last you for about 60 to 90 minutes. And one scoop of performance energy is going to last you for 90 minutes, maybe up to 2 hours. And for some people, even a little bit longer. So what I usually use is the performance energy, because most of my workouts are longer than the ones that I'm using UCAN for. But now that this is out, it's handy to have for those workouts that are in that like 60 to 45 minute to 1.5 hour range.
But going back to what we were talking about earlier, a lot of people just have water. Do people need to have a drink mix before they do just a shorter workout like that, if it's low heart rate?
So yeah, I mean, not necessarily. A lot of people use fasted workouts as a way to encourage their body to burn fat, and I've done that too, and I do that with some of my workouts. Because UCAN's giving you steady energy and it's keeping your blood sugar stable. I find that it helps to stay, like, towards the end of the workout. Sometimes I find myself petering out and fading out, even if it's just a mental thing, not so much a physical thing. If I get up and I work out fasted. So by taking UCAN beforehand, it's achieving the same goal of helping your body to burn fat better, because it's not spiking your blood sugar, but you're able to complete the workout in a really robust way. Like you're able to nail it.
Well, especially if you go later in the afternoon. I know in the morning, if I just wake up, have a little coffee and my water, I can go for workout. But if it's middle of the day, if I get to workout, say 1 or 2 o'clock, I do need to eat something beforehand. So this might be easier because I can't eat food and then go for a workout, or else I regurgitate it. So
I'm with you.
Having something like this would be good for me as an example in the afternoon workout session, because 90 minutes in the morning, I don't want anything in there. But that would be good. Now, what are the ingredients?
Another thing to mention too, we're talking, I think mainly to triathletes here, but our market as a company are triathletes, runners, and fitness individuals. And workout energy is great for the fitness individuals because most of their workouts are less than 90 minutes. They're like in that 45-minute to 1.5 range. They're the people that are going to CrossFit or going to or they're going to going to the gym for an hour. They're going to be on like the elliptical for 20 minutes and they're going to be doing some weights for 40 minutes, like that kind of, or maybe they're doing a group workout, right? Some group fitness classes. So that product was designed very much with them in mind.
Got it.
But then we realized kind of along the way that, most runners and triathletes, a lot of their workouts are in that 45-minute to 1.5 hour range, even if they're long course Ironman athletes. Like most of the stuff that I do is less than 1.5 hours. So workout energy works really well for that.
Well, yeah, so most of our listeners, I think, are just endurance athletes or just athletes as it is. So it's just doing different sports. But what I thought was, too, working on a client's nutrition plan last couple of months doing Spartan Racing, and they're doing the Beast, that's 15 miles of obstacle races, and it is not a low heart rate race at all. So we were trying to find fuel that you could pack and take. So I was having her test out UCAN, because you are still, you're burning fat and carbs, but you're burning a lot more carbohydrates because your heart rate's so high doing those obstacles. It's so different than a triathlon or a marathon where you're keeping the heart rate down, or a century bike ride, that I think a UCAN with a little bit more of that slow release carbohydrate might be more effective than one of those different products out there that cause a little more GI distress.
Yeah, totally. UCAN's the only thing I can have right before a hard workout. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'm like you. I feel like I'm going to cough up whatever I just ate.
Yeah. So the other thing is the electrolytes too that I found. Those are a great option too if you're doing a shorter ride. I know I've just been putting electrolytes in my water and not having the sugar. That's another product. So you guys have a new hydration electrolytes that I noticed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, UCAN Hydrate is fantastic. It's 0 calories, 0 sugar. It's just naturally sweetened. And the electrolytes that are in it reflect what comes out in your sweat. So it's from some actual studies that we did with Bob Seebohar. And we found the typical proportions that come out in your sweat between sodium, potassium, magnesium, down the line, calcium, and reflected that in the product itself. And they taste delicious. It's in watermelon flavor, which is our newest one, berry and lemon lime. And you just take a sleeve of it or a scoop of it, depending on which, whether you're buying the sleeves in the box or the canister, which has a little scooper in it. And you just put 1 serving of that into like a normal water bottle, and it's delicious. It's going to give you electrolytes. I also take sometimes the plain UCAN and a scoop of like the watermelon hydrate, and that way I have electrolytes, flavor, and fuel all in one bottle when I'm out on the bike.
That's a good idea. So I know we're running out of time, but it's funny, I was writing an article today. Are you fat adapted or are you fat athlete? It wasn't my title of it, but I just thought of that. It's like so many people out there training. And as Phil Maffetone said years ago in an article he wrote, is, you can be fit and unhealthy. And I think that's a really important part for athletes of whatever sport, to really look at how you're training and your lifestyle habits as we talk about in the holistic method, that you can be doing all this training, but I was writing my article just from observations. There's a lot of overweight athletes. And I think people still think that they can go out and do, like last Saturday, I did the century bike ride. And I noticed not majority of people are overweight. And even at IRONMAN, I noticed okay, you think if 3,500 calories equals 1 pound of fat lost was accurate, you'd be just a stick. But most people don't lose weight. So I wrote this whole blog about, so I know my answer, but what would you say is why there's so many overweight endurance athletes out there?
I think a lot of it is because of the fact that people are taking all these sugary sports nutritions and drinks and things. Yeah. Like they're jamming their body full of sugar and train your gut, right? Take 300 calories an hour. You have to train it, so you have to do it in your training. So you're over-consuming. You're having way more calories, A. B, it's sugar. It's basically simple sugars. And that's messing with your body and your insulin levels, your body's ability to burn fat. So you're storing a lot of that fat because your insulin levels are spiked. And then you've got the fact that you're just taking too many calories in general. So between those two things, like the fact that it's sugar and the fact that it's lots of calories, like you've got uphill battle you're fighting by jamming that all in your body. And it's just not good chronically for yourself anyway to be taking all that sugar. So it's much, much better to be able to take far fewer calories of something that's not going to spike your blood sugar. And one reason why UCAN is just so compelling for body composition purposes, it's amazing.
Yeah. And I think that's why I love the product and like to use this for when I go longer training rides as I start to pick up my mileage and maybe race again someday as I get healthier. But it is fascinating to me to be watching from the sidelines and doing these different training events. And, there's the aid stations at the bike ride I did last weekend. We stop and I brought my own nut butter, F-bomb I had, and my electrolytes in my bag and sea salt. And then you see I don't know how people can have pineapple and there's lots of fruit and then there's cookies and all this stuff that, I'm like, so I got inspired writing this blog in my head while I was doing this century bike ride and finished it today. And it's just so funny to me and sad at the same time. I just want to reach out and help everyone. That's why I feel like it's my mission to focus more on how to train the fat adapted athlete to improve performance and longevity, because what we're doing now is really impacting our health in the long run. And you're speeding up the aging process, eating this high carb, sugary diet and filled with the processed foods, refined sugars, and vegetable oils that are really not doing well for your body. So being fit and unhealthy, I think, is not a positive thing. I think, working on your nutrition and maybe during the 30, 45-minute workouts and do some HIIT training and low heart rate training combined based on the person is really what you should maybe look at doing instead for a while and train yourself to be more fat adapted. So it's just a side note, but just something I keep writing about and looking at.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who eat so they can work out too. That's not really a healthy thing.
Yeah. Well, I was laughing because I was writing this article.
Work out so they can eat. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got it. But I know I've had people gain weight, and I said that in my blog. I think a lot of people work out, so then they have ability to eat whatever they want. But then I think they gain weight instead of lose weight. But anyways, another topic. I would love to share the links for where people can find more information. And if, what you're doing with Generation UCAN is in charge of the triathlon division.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So my title there, I'm the director of the triathlon business for UCAN. And you can follow UCAN at GEN UCAN, UCAN. That's on, that'll be in the show notes too. So maybe I don't have to spell these, but
look in the show notes below and
that's to follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And we have a YouTube channel and through all those things, and also our email distribution. You should sign up for that because there's tons of great content coming out from the company that we put together specific to triathletes. So throw your name on there, mention you're a triathlete, and you'll get a lot of great stuff coming out. And then you can follow me if you'd like. My handle is IRONMAN Matt Bach, and that's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And then my website is ironmanbach.com. And you can follow or go to UCAN for generationucan.com, and that's where you can either check out the website and all the great content that's on there, but also if you want to buy some UCAN.
And you can get a 15% off if you use the code WHOLE ATHLETE, WHOLE athlete, and use that code when you check out and try out UCAN in your training. Don't try anything new race day. So start working on your metabolic efficiency, what you're eating, mix up that macronutrient ratio. We also had another podcast out with Rich Soares, and we talked all about this. He did a test with Bob Siebelhor. We're talking about more of the testing cart stuff. So you can go back and find that podcast with Rich Soares. But I think it's a great time to try this out and implement it into your training program and racing. And those that aren't athletes, I think it's something good to go to if you are, busy all day and you don't want to be fasted and you don't want to grab something to eat. So maybe it's something to sip on to keep blood sugar stable. So, okay, Matt. Well, thanks for your time today and great information. And are you doing any races this year? Or are you taking the year off?
So I will be racing, but I don't know what yet. I have nothing on the calendar. I was just finishing up my MBA, so I was ultra busy with that. Yep. UCAN, and I've got 2 kids as well. They're 1 and 2 Irish twins, so I got my hands full.
That is. Well, hopefully
I will be out there though.
Okay. Well, I should be at Ironman Hawaii this year, so hopefully you guys will be there and promoting UCAN.
Yeah, I will be there personally.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your time today, and good luck with your racing and triathlon season this year.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.